I've been a police officer for 6 years, mostly patrolling downtown after dark. Most nights are quiet. Drunks arguing outside bars, a few late-night break-ins, nothing that keeps you up worrying about more than your paperwork. But there are nights you never forget. Nights that make you question what is real. This was one of them. It started just past midnight. My partner, Officer Lang, and I were cruising through the older part of the city, where narrow alleys twist between abandoned buildings and the street lamps flicker like dying stars. The air was thick, humid with the faint smell of rot that always lingers near the river. Lang was humming to himself, probably a radio song I couldn't recognize. I tried to shake off the unease settling in my gut. The radio crackled, then burst into life. Unit 14, reports of screaming near 5th and Monroe. Residents report hearing a woman's voice, panicked, then silence. Proceed with caution. Lang didn't flinch. He shrugged and muttered. Another drunk calling for attention. Should be empty streets anyway. I didn't say anything. Call it instinct, but something about the way the dispatcher said, then silence, sent chills down my spine. We drove to the alley. It was narrow, enclosed by rusted brick walls on either side, barely enough room for our cruiser. That's when I heard it, a soft trembling sound, singing almost. Not happy, not comforting. A high-pitched, wavering voice carrying through the alley, echoing off the brick. It was faint but unmistakable. A woman's voice full of fear. My stomach dropped. I signaled Lang to slow down. He rolled his eyes. It's probably someone lost, or... I didn't let him finish. The singing stopped. Dead silence. The alley was empty. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. Nothing. Then a movement at the far end. A figure, thin, hunched, swaying unnaturally. My pulse quickened. Police! I called, trying to sound authoritative. The figure didn't respond. It turned slowly. Face pale, eyes hollow, lips cracked into a grin that didn't reach them. Lang came up beside me, gun drawn. Stay back, he whispered. I wanted to step forward, wanted to ask if she needed help. But every instinct screamed at me to run. And then she started walking toward us. Not normally, not like a human, but in stuttering jerks, as if her joints had no intention of obeying physics. The air grew colder with every step, frost forming in the corners of the alley. I radioed dispatch. Unit 14, we have a possible static. My stomach nodded. The radio cut out completely. No crackles, no voice, nothing. The figure stopped just a few feet away. I could see her clearly now. Her hair was matted, tangled with dirt. Her clothes were torn and soaked, though it hadn't rained. Her eyes, they weren't just hollow. They were black, bottomless pits, and her mouth stretched wider than humanly possible, the edges of her lips cracking unnaturally. Lang fired a warning shot. It went through her. She didn't flinch. Didn't even pause. Instead, she tilted her head, a grotesque curiosity in her movement, and started laughing. Or something like laughter. A mix of shrieks and gurgles that made my ears ring. We ran. Back to the cruiser. Adrenaline making every second stretch out longer than possible. I slammed the door, started the engine. Lang tried to radio again. Still nothing. And then I swear the singing started again, this time all around us, inside the car, outside, everywhere. I couldn't tell which direction it came from. We drove, not stopping, not looking back. The city streets should have been familiar, but they weren't. Every block looked wrong. Alleyways extended farther than possible. Buildings twisted at impossible angles, shadows reaching out like they wanted to grab us. Then, without warning, the car stalled. Just like that, nothing, no engine sound, no lights, nothing. I tried the ignition again, dead. Lang cursed. I looked out the windshield and froze. There, standing in the middle of the street, was the woman, or whatever she was, and behind her more shapes emerging from the darkness. Figures, tall and thin, grinning the same impossible grin. Black voids for eyes, moving without sound. They stretched toward us. I grabbed the door, tried to escape, but the handles wouldn't budge. It was like they were glued to my hands. Lang was shouting, pounding the door. The singing grew louder, each note cutting deeper into my mind. My vision blurred. I felt hands, cold, slick, clawing, pressing against the windows from the outside, trying to pull us out. I can't explain how I got out of there. I don't know if I really did. 1 second, I was trapped in the car. The next, I was running down a street that shouldn't have existed. The fog swirled around me, thick and suffocating. Every shadow seemed alive, moving with intent. I woke up hours later, collapsed in an empty lot. The cruiser was gone. Lang was gone. There was no evidence of the alley, the figures, the singing. Just an empty street, the fog lifting as if nothing had happened. I reported everything, of course. Dispatch asked questions, tried to track the car, but there was nothing. No record of Lang on the force that night. No 5th and Monroe in the city database. No calls about screaming or missing officers. Since then, I've seen her again, sometimes in the reflection of a store window, a black figure in the corner of an alley or in a photograph, blurry and warped, and the singing, soft, faint, impossible to ignore, follows me. I've tried to leave the city, tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was stress, hallucination, fatigue. But I know the truth. Some nights when the streets are quiet and the fog rolls in just right, the alley calls for me. The woman waits. And I know she's not alone. The city streets have changed. Shapes move in corners that shouldn't be there. Shadows twist unnaturally. And every so often I hear Lang's voice, distant and broken, calling my name through the static of a dead radio. I don't know how much time I have before it finds me completely. But I can feel it waiting, watching, singing, and I know, when it decides I've lingered long enough I won't be able to run. I had been on the night shift for almost 4 years, patrolling areas no one else wanted to cover. Empty streets, deserted train tracks, abandoned buildings. Most nights were uneventful, filled with the hum of the city's neon lights and the occasional stray dog. But there's always that one night that reminds you why some places are best left untouched. It began with a call I'll never forget. Dispatch crackled in the otherwise silent station. Unit 22, report of unusual activity at the old Willow Creek station. Witnesses describe strange lights and sounds. Approach with caution. I grabbed my gear and radioed my partner, Officer Daniels, who had joined the department just 6 months prior. He was eager, too eager for my taste. Probably squatters or vandals, he said. Nothing we haven't seen before. The Willow Creek station had been decommissioned years ago. Tracks rusted, platforms crumbling, graffiti everywhere. The local government had long abandoned it, citing safety hazards. But something about that night felt wrong. As we approached, the sky was unnaturally dark even for midnight. Clouds moved in rapid, chaotic patterns, almost like the wind had a mind of its own. The moment we parked and stepped out of the cruiser, I noticed it. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the cold air, despite it being summer. Daniels led the way, flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. We walked along the tracks, our footsteps echoing against the empty platform. That's when I heard it, a faint signal like static interspersed with voices. Low murmurs at first, almost inaudible, then growing louder, overlapping, unintelligible. I raised my radio. "Dispatch, do you hear?" The device went dead. Static filled the earpiece, then silence. Daniels frowned. Probably interference from old wiring. Nothing to worry about. I wanted to believe him. I really did. We moved onto the platform. The old station building loomed before us, broken windows like hollow eyes staring down. The door hung off its hinges. I should have stayed outside. I should have left. But curiosity or stupidity pushed me forward. Inside, the air was thick, damp, metallic. The smell of rust and mold filled my nose. Our flashlights caught glimpses of the walls, scratch marks deep and jagged as if something had clawed its way through the plaster. And then I saw it. A figure crouched in the corner, barely visible, skin pale, clothes torn, hair long and tangled, eyes wide and unblinking. Its mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just the faintest vibration, like it was trying to communicate without using a voice. I froze. Daniels whispered, "Call it in. Don't go any closer." I opened my mouth to respond, but the wall seemed to pulse around us, the floor vibrating slightly. The static grew louder, voices layering over one another, forming words that made my head spin. "Leave." Never leave." I stepped back. The figure moved. Too fast, impossibly fast, gliding across the floor rather than walking. It stopped a few feet away, staring at us. And then others appeared. Shadows that were almost human, tall, skeletal, moving with jerky, unnatural motions. Their eyes were black voids, mouths stretched into wide, impossible grins. Daniels fired his weapon. Bullets passed through them like air. I tried to radio again, nothing. Panic took over. We ran toward the platform exit, but the layout had changed. Corridors extended farther than possible, doorways leading into endless darkness. The whispers followed, echoing in our minds, wrapping around our thoughts, clawing at our sanity. We stumbled into what seemed to be the main station office. Papers scattered, chairs overturned, and then the lights flickered on briefly, revealing the walls. Faces, dozens of them, pressed into the plaster, eyes wide, mouths frozen mid-scream. Some were fresh, their skin pale and raw. Others had rotted away, leaving skeletal impressions. I gagged. Daniels grabbed me, trying to drag me out. But the figures were everywhere now, emerging from shadows, their movements jerky, twitching, laughing without sound. "Keep moving," Daniels shouted. I wanted to obey, but my legs felt heavy, as if the floor itself were resisting me. The whispers grew insistent, repeating my name over and over, beckoning me to stay, to join them. I caught sight of a stairwell leading down. It felt like the only option. We descended into the basement, where the temperature dropped further, and the smell of decay intensified. My flashlight caught glimpses of walls carved with symbols, spirals, jagged lines, shapes I didn't recognize but felt alive. And then we saw them. More bodies, hung, fused into the walls, faces pressed flat, mouths moving, whispering. Some were our age, others older, some children. All were alive in some horrific way, screaming silently, trapped forever. The shadows advanced, slipping along the floor, stretching toward us. Daniels and I ran blindly, not caring where we went. The basement seemed endless, twisting and turning, leading us back to the same places over and over. The whispers became deafening, forming words I could barely understand. "You're next. Stay. Forever." Finally, I saw a narrow crawl space at the far end of the basement. Desperation overrode fear. I crawled through, Daniels behind me. Darkness pressed in from all sides. Then abruptly we emerged outside onto the overgrown tracks behind the station. The fog had lifted slightly. The night seemed normal again. The station, though, it was gone. Just an empty clearing. Weeds growing where the foundation should have been. Nothing to indicate it ever existed. We ran to the cruiser. But when we tried the ignition, it failed. Dead, no explanation. I radioed dispatch again, silence, and then, faintly, the whispering carried on the night wind. My name, Daniel's name, calling us back. We eventually made it back to the precinct on foot. I reported everything, but there were no missing persons records matching what we saw. No building permits, nothing. Daniels vanished days later. Officially, he resigned. Unofficially, I know he didn't leave. I know what took him. Since that night, I hear it again. The static, the whispers, faint in the distance. Shadows at the edge of my vision. Sometimes, in the hum of my patrol car, I catch the faint pulse of the station calling me back. And I know it's still out there, waiting for anyone foolish enough to enter its domain. I don't patrol that district anymore. I avoid tracks, abandoned buildings, anything that might lead back. But sometimes when the city is quiet, I can still hear it. The whispers from the forgotten station calling my name, promising I'll never leave. And I know deep down that one day I won't. I've spent nearly a decade on the night shift, and in all that time I've learned that the streets hide things most people can't see. Things that move just beyond the edge of your vision, things that wait for you in alleys, abandoned buildings, and the spaces between flickering streetlights. Ashwood was one of those places. A quiet suburb by day, forgotten industrial blocks by night, a place where the hum of the city dies and silence takes over. I was paired with Officer Kent that evening. He was a rookie, eager, sharp, and naive. Exactly the kind of partner who makes you nervous in the field. We were on patrol in the industrial sector, mostly driving past old factories and warehouses, keeping an eye out for break-ins or squatters. The call came through just after midnight. Unit 33, 7th Avenue and Ashwood Lane. Reports of a missing security guard at the old Ashwood Industrial Complex. Witnesses report lights flickering inside the building and hearing faint screams. Proceed with caution. Back up en route. Kent grinned. A missing security guard? Probably just ran off, scared by a cat or the old plumbing? I didn't reply. Something about the call felt off. The way dispatch repeated proceed with caution 3 times. The way the city seemed unnaturally quiet. I didn't like it. When we arrived, the industrial complex loomed above us, massive and decaying. Broken windows, rusted metal doors, graffiti streaked across the walls. The streetlights barely illuminated the perimeter. Inside I could hear a faint hum like electricity, but wrong. Low, vibrating, almost alive. Kent led the way into the main building. I followed, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air inside was cold, damp, and carried a faint metallic tang. Every step we took echoed, bouncing off walls and rusted machinery, making it hard to distinguish real sound from echo. We reached the central floor. That's when I heard it, the security guard's voice calling for help, faint and desperate. We ran toward the sound, but the building changed. Hallways stretched impossibly, doors that had been closed now wide open, leading to empty rooms that seemed to extend forever. Then I saw him, the guard standing in the center of a room, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. His eyes were wide, pale, and unseeing. He tried to speak, but the words were garbled, like a record played at the wrong speed. Behind him, shadows moved. Figures, tall and thin, twisting unnaturally, faces stretched into wide, impossible grins. Kent shouted, "Back up!" But the moment we tried to retreat, the hallways shifted. Doors vanished, walls stretched, and the building seemed to pulse, breathing around us. The lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and crept toward us. The guard's body convulsed, his mouth opening wider than possible. A guttural scream erupted, low and unhuman. The shadows lunged. Kent fired his weapon. Bullets passed through them as if they were smoke. I tried the radio, nothing, static. Silence. Panic overtook me. I grabbed Kent's arm, pulling him toward a stairwell that hadn't been there moments ago. We descended into the basement. Darkness swallowed us. The smell hit first, rot, decay, iron, something alive and decomposing. There were more figures here. Crouched, sprawling across the floor, walls, even the ceiling. Their faces twisted, eyes black voids, mouths impossibly wide. Whispers crawled along the walls, beckoning us closer. I felt my mind start to fray, the words burrowing into my skull. Stay. Join. Never leave. We ran blindly, slipping over debris, crashing through machinery, our lights flickering, revealing glimpses of the horrors around us. Some figures reached for us, skeletal hands, fingers bending at impossible angles, trying to pull us into the darkness. We found another stairwell and emerged into a narrow corridor. It seemed familiar, like a hallway from the main floor, but wrong. The walls were lined with scratches, symbols, spirals etched deep into the concrete. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, repeating our names, calling us to stop, to surrender. We saw the exit, a rusted metal door at the far end. Relief surged. But as we ran, the floor beneath Kent gave way. I grabbed him, but something stronger, heavier than gravity, yanked him down. His scream cut off in a wet, tearing sound. I tried to pull him, but he was gone in an instant, swallowed by shadows that didn't belong to anything human. I stumbled, blinded by tears and adrenaline, and finally pushed through the exit. The night air hit me, warm and silent, but the building was gone. In its place, an empty lot, weeds growing tall, broken fencing barely holding the perimeter. No trace of the complex, no windows, no hallways, nothing. I ran to the car, heart hammering, lungs burning. The street was empty. Ashwood Lane looked normal again. But I could feel it, the presence, the awareness of whatever had claimed Kent. Watching, waiting. Back at the precinct, I reported what happened. They asked questions, but all records showed the building had been demolished years ago. No missing security guard, no active industrial complex, no backup needed. Kent was never found. Officially, he resigned. I know better. Since that night, I can't drive down Ashwood Lane without feeling eyes on me. Shadows stretch where none should be. At night, faint scratches echo through my apartment walls. Sometimes when I fall asleep, I hear whispers in the darkness, repeating my name. I know it hasn't forgotten Kent, and I know it hasn't forgotten me. Ashwood is still out there, in some hidden dimension, stretching, waiting. And I know that one day, if I'm not careful, the last call will come for me, and I won't be able to answer it without joining the shadows forever.